Why is it that trauma seems to surface in relationships?
Because it's relational. So 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 trauma, like we think of trauma as like traumatic events, which is a type of trauma, like if you're in an earthquake or whatever, it's shocking to the body. A trauma is actually defined not as the event, but as our nervous system's capacity to process or digest an event. So basically, if two people are in the same event, for one, it can be traumatic and another not. I think a good example I always give is like a roller coaster. There could be two people on the same roller coaster, and one can really like, woohoo, yeah, and really experience it, and they get off feeling exhilarated, and the other one contracts and they're like, ah, and they get off and they're traumatized. It's to do with the nervous system's capacity for an experience. And when we're younger, our nervous system is much more fragile, and when we're older. And so events that happen can create trauma, and that's a sort of incompleted response in our body. So that's important to remember. But the bigger thing that I've come across with my trauma work is that, especially in my work of that I'm doing, is okay, there are the big things like an earthquake, but most people's trauma is relational trauma. And
Mhm.
relational trauma is the trauma we feel when the people who were meant to be our caretakers are not keeping us safe, basically. So they might be neglecting us, going off and doing their own thing. They might be violating us, crossing our boundaries for their own pleasure or their own purpose, or even abusing us, taking out their unresolved emotions on us. And there we've got violence and rape and other things like that, which is their trauma, of course, unresolved trauma, of course, being passed on down, which doesn't justify it, but it does explain it. And so this relational trauma is the bigger part. And I see that so many people coming to Tantra workshops, they're actually coming to heal that. They don't think it in their head like, okay, I've got relational trauma, I'll go to do a workshop. But they're coming because their intimacy, their loves lives, their sex lives, their relationships aren't working. And the reason they aren't working is because of unresolved relational trauma. So that's why I like to teach about it, to help people understand it more. And the thing is, especially 1 till 7, like these early years are very formative years, and we don't have a physical memory of things that happen there. And also, whatever's happening is normal to you because you don't have anything to measure it about. So if you have an aggressive father and a shut down mother, that's just normal because you don't know anything else, but it is impacting your nervous system. You're not getting that secure attachment that you need. You're not getting the safety that you need, and so that's where relational trauma kicks in. And of course, back to our topic of boarding school, you've got a whole bunch of traumatized people shoved into one space. There's less of that commitment that you have with family,
Mhm.
and so there's a lot of bullying and harshness, and older kids and teachers passing down trauma to younger ones. Trauma, this kind of relational trauma, is deeply, deeply linked with power,
Mhm.
and so it's also about abuse of power. When your power equals responsibility, and when we're in a position of power, like being a teacher or a priest or whatever, we have right use of power is to use our power to protect and to empower those who are in our power. Only those two things: protect them and help them stand on their own feet. And that's what parents should be doing. That's what teachers should be doing. It's what we should all be doing when we have a position of power. But no one teaches us about power. And what we see being done as power is, like, when you've got the power, you can beat up the younger kid. When you've got the power, you can take advantage, just like they did of you. Then you get the power, then you can do it back to them. And that's what's happening. It's like, right, now I've got the power and I'm going to get my own back on you. And we see this misuse of power again and again and again, sadly, because power can be the most beautiful thing. We need it. We do need to have powerful parents looking after children, and powerful teachers and powerful guides. But unfortunately, we have such a misuse of power. So I'd say almost everybody has um, relational trauma. It's just a matter of degree. If you had parents who tried their best, then there's less trauma going on, but there's bound to be in places. And then, of course, there are very severe examples, like we see working with horrific cults and things like that. Children who are raised in very traumatic environments. So this trauma, I think, which I call relational trauma, sometimes it's called complex PTSD. It has different names. Relational trauma, I think, is the one that's just the simplest and explains it. This, I think, is a bigger one. In a way, when you've been in an earthquake, you've been in an earthquake, and then you can go and get psychological help for it. If you've been with dysfunctional parents or bullying in school, you often don't even remember it, or it was normalized, and so you don't even realize there's a problem, and you're just going through issues in relationship, and you don't even know why. And it's because of relational trauma. And that's why I like to really speak about it and bring it in consciously, so that we can start to heal from the past and recreate a better future.